The strangest thing about the Odyssey is not its monsters. It is time. The poem seems to remember a world that vanished centuries before it took written form. Now Odysseus is back on cinema screens, and so is an old question. Was any of it real? Yet the poem contains fragments of a real civilization. Fortified palaces, bronze weapons, seaborne exchange, and a palatial writing system that disappeared from Greece. To find it, we must separate archaeology, inherited memory, and what storytellers created. The adventures are set in Mycenaean Greece. Mycenaean culture flourished roughly from 1600 to 1100 BCE. Palatial centers such as Mycena, Tiryns, and Pylos reached their height in the later part of that span. This was not the Greece of philosophers, democratic assemblies, and gleaming classical temples. It was a palace world, guarded by immense stone walls and connected to the eastern Mediterranean by ships. Then, around the 12th century BCE, that system fell apart. Palaces burned or were abandoned. Trade networks fractured. Linear B, the script used by palace scribes to record an early form of Greek, disappeared from use in Greece. Yet the stories survived through generations of performance. Many scholars think versions began to be written in the 700s BCE and took a more developed form by the 600s. That leaves a gap of several centuries, long enough for memory and invention to become almost impossible to separate. One part of the legend stands on solid ground. Troy was a real place. At Hisarlik, near the mouth of the Dardanelles, archaeologists have uncovered thousands of years of settlement. Bronze Age Troy had fortifications, gates, defensive towers, and a substantial lower town. The site stood where Aegean and Anatolian worlds met. But a real city is not the same as a proven story. Several layers show destruction. None identifies Homer's 10-year war. A conflict or several conflicts across the Aegean is plausible. The poet's exact siege is not established history. Tradition may preserve the outline of a lost age without preserving a transcript of its events. The Mycenaean palace societies behind the tale's human setting were real. Their rulers built fortified citadels, managed farms and workshops, and sent ships through a busy international world. Their surviving tablets are wonderfully unheroic. They record goods, workers, livestock, land, and offerings. That bureaucracy tells us more about Bronze Age power than any monster does. The sea was both road and danger. The same vessel could carry traders, warriors, or raiders. None of this proves that one man ruled Ithaca and spent 10 years returning from Troy. It shows that the tale's households, seaborne wealth, raids, feasts, and fragile loyalties had real foundation. One object reveals how strangely precise an old memory can be. In the Iliad, Odysseus is given a helmet made from rows of boar's tusks fixed over leather and felt. Archaeology has uncovered helmets of that Mycenaean type. They had gone out of use long before the epic's later audiences. It is an extraordinary match, but not a name tag. An authentic fragment can survive inside a story whose people and events remain unverified. What then of the famous voyage? Troy is real, the modern island called Ithaca is real, but whether it precisely matches the poem's Ithaca remains disputed. Between them, certainty dissolves. Later writers and modern scholars have proposed Sicily, North Africa, and the Strait of Messina for several episodes. These are hypotheses, not a demonstrated route. The best-known fantastic wanderings are concentrated in books 9 to 12 and narrated by Odysseus himself. Winds are tied into a bag. The dead can be questioned. Sea monsters make every choice fatal. Its sea is partly Mediterranean water and partly a story world, the dangerous space beyond ordinary rules, where identity, loyalty, appetite and judgment are tested. Every performance carried the past into a different present. By the time the poem was taking written form, Greek communities were again traveling widely, trading, settling abroad, and encountering unfamiliar peoples. Their concerns entered the inherited Bronze Age tale. Old weapons and vanished palaces could stand beside social customs and sea journeys more familiar to later listeners. It is a mosaic. One piece remembers an old helmet, another reflects later seafaring. A real city becomes the stage for a legendary war. Recognizable hazards open onto islands no excavation has securely identified. The mixture is not a defect, it reveals how later societies imagine and reshape a lost past. As stories about homes destroyed, companions lost, strangers feared, and one survivor desperate to return. So, was the Odyssey real? Not as a literal account. We cannot verify Odysseus, plot his voyage, or excavate his monsters. But the poem is not floating free of history. Troy existed. Mycenaean palace societies existed. Their ships crossed the Aegean Sea. Their scribes recorded Greek on clay, and their palatial system collapsed around 1200 BCE. Centuries later, storytellers carried distorted pieces of that world into a new age. The monsters belong to myth, not verified history. The uncertainty, danger, and longing that gave them power did not. And that leaves two mysteries for us to investigate next. Was there a historical conflict behind the Trojan War? Or can any part of Odysseus's route be placed on a map? Tell me which voyage we take next.